Welcome back to the podcast channel. We're here again with another podcast brought to us courtesy of Glasgow Pensioners for Indy and Mary McKee. It's number 5, I think, in a series that they've organised, and this is the last of the series. And this one is with Ivan McKee, SNP MSP, also a minister in the Scottish Government, and as it happens, she's Mary's local MSP. If you want to listen to the others, they're all on our YouTube channel or our website or wherever you get your podcasts. They're also on Pensioners for Indy website.
It's been really interesting because she's done all the Indy parties. So we've had SSP, ISP, ALPA, Greens and SNP.
Yeah.
And ISP was also covered the Liberation umbrella as well. So even they're included in that. And we've put them all in a playlist on our YouTube channel called Countdown to Holyrood 2026. If anything to do with the upcoming election, we'll keep dropping in there. But it's been really interesting. So well done, Mary.
Yeah.
We're hoping to speak to Mary, aren't we, next week?
Yes, We're going to ask her on to come on the podcast channel, just have a wee chat, just ask her how she feels after having done all this and, what came out of it from her point of view.
Well, let's hope she says yes now we've given her the billing.
Should we just get going?
Over to the Bacchus Bar with Pensioners for Indy and Ivan McKee.
First of all, thanks for all the work you do for Indy as a group, and I know you're out in Buchanan Street every week. Excellent, right, and that's really, really important that work continues to engage with the public on this issue. And I suppose the second thing to say is that if you look at the polling on this, on Indy, we continue to hover about the 50%, which is solid, and it's a good place to start from. And I think there's a lot more people there that are persuadable. I do a lot of engagement with schools, as you would expect, and as some young people came in from one of the local secondary schools just this week to the Parliament, and I had a great conversation with them and lots of really interesting questions. But several of them were talking about Indy, and every single one of them in favour of Indy. So I think that younger generation, it's become the default position, frankly, which is absolutely transformed from 20, 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago, which I think really holds us in good stead for the future. I can talk about the case for independence, but I don't need to sell that to you. But obviously, when I was doing my work with Business for Scotland during the campaign and after that, I've done a lot of meetings after that as well, it's worth reminding people that Scotland's economy is strong. We start from a good place, despite what you'll hear or read in the press. We've got some fabulous sectors, be it our energy sector, world leader in renewable energy, be it on our tech sector, which people don't talk about much, but Scotland's digital tech sector, our fintech sector is one of the leading in Europe, which never mind our financial services sector, which is incredibly strong. And you just need to walk around this city or Edinburgh and see all the international businesses that are here because they get such a strong pool of talent in that sector. Our life science sector, manufacturing and medicines of the future, again, very strong. Scotland's space sector that we don't talk about very much. We make more satellites in Glasgow than anywhere in the world outside of California. So right across the economy, Scotland's got some real strengths. Now, can we do better? Absolutely we can. But having said that, we've got lower unemployment here than they have across the rest of the UK. We get higher average wages. With last year our economy, although you wouldn't know it to listen to some commentators, last year our economy grew faster than the UK as a whole. So there's, I say that economic case is strong, and the thing that holds us back is the fact that we don't have the ability, as you know, to be able to make the decisions on our own account to develop the potential that there is to get our young people to the level they need to be able to take advantage of those skilled jobs and to invest where we need to in infrastructure and elsewhere to grow out those really, really key sectors of the future that Scotland's very strong internationally. And I haven't even mentioned the whisky sector, which of course is world leading, has been in the news recently for a number of reasons. So I think that case is clear, right? And the more I've seen over the last 10 years since Indy Ref has just reinforced my belief that Scotland has got more than what it takes to be a very successful independent country from an economic point of view. And then you look at where we are just now in terms of the things that were held back on outside of economic development by the UK government, and what a shambles that has been over the last year. Never have we seen a government go from the dizzy heights of that big majority to the trough that they're in now, and everything they touch is just creates more and more problems for them, which is obviously a big opportunity for us. But be it on the policies on social security, the two-child cap, what they did on the winter fuel payment, what a shambles that was, how they treat the most vulnerable in society is something obviously very, very different to the values that we hold in Scotland. And we might kind of talk about the immigration topic, which is obviously again very topical, but Scotland, as we know, needs more people. Where one of the things that does hold us back, be it in our social care sector or in other sectors across public service and indeed in the private sector, is a lack of people coming in to fill those jobs. We're all getting older, and we need people to look after us, frankly, and that happens to all of us, and those gaps have traditionally been filled by immigration, and the UK government's approach to that very different to what Scotland needs to support our public services and to other social care in particular. So that aspect, again, Scotland are a very different place from where the UK government would want to take us, and there's many other issues we could talk about, not least austerity and the lack of investment that is holding Scotland back. So I think that case also, the economic case is strong, the social case, if you want to call it that, the reason why we need to be an independent country to be able to maximise our potential and support everyone in our society is really clear as well. Like you, I'd love for us to have won in 2014, but we didn't. I'd love for us to be independent yesterday, if not today, but we do have to go through a process. That's just not going to happen because we want it to happen. And even on the polls, we're talking about, as I said at the start, we're at 50%, and we've held that well, give or take a couple of points over the last 10 years or more, but it's not at the heights it needs to be. There's a significant number of people in this country that need to be persuaded of that case. As I said, if and when we get to a referendum, hopefully sooner rather than later, I believe that there's a lot of people that can be persuaded of that case, but we do need to do that, right? There is no shortcut to this, much as we'd like there to be one. There's no magic bullet. The process of becoming independent requires not just convincing people in Scotland that support the case, they should support it. It also requires that international recognition, and I'd love to sit here and say we just need to do one or two simple things and it'll all fall into place, but we need to continue to convince people, and we need to continue to make the case for Scotland's right to choose, and that's been the focus of the Scottish Government, making that case, because that's a strong argument. People might say, do you know what, I'm not sure about independence, or even I think that we shouldn't be independent, but for them to argue that we shouldn't have the right to make that decision is a much harder argument for them to make, and that's why we're focused on that. So what needs to happen to take that forward? And again, I'd love to sit here and say there's some easy answers to this. The reality is there isn't. If you look back at what's happened in the past, we won the referendum in 2014 because we got an overall majority of SNP MSPs in the election in 2011. If we hadn't got that majority in 2011, then we wouldn't have got a referendum. And it's worth remembering that in that 2011 majority, those 69 seats, we won, I think 16 of them were won on the list. So anyway, it tells you list seats aren't important. If I hadn't been focused on the list in 2011, we wouldn't have won the referendum in 2014. That's the reality of it. And that's what we've got to get back to. And that's because we've had a pro-independence majority of seats with us in the Greens in the last two parliaments. That hasn't been enough to create the momentum for a referendum. We've had a majority on the list in 2021 in favour of pro-independence parties. That wasn't enough to get a referendum on independence. The only way that's going to happen is the way it happened before, which is us, the SNP on its own, winning that majority of seats, and that makes it an arguable case that the people of Scotland are voting for that manifesto commitment for independence. And from where we're at today, if you look back at this time last year, people were talking about Alex Salmond as First Minister. So we've come a long way since then. I think nobody credibly talks about that. I think even Aaron Sarwar's finding it difficult to continue to talk about himself as a potential First Minister from where we are now, 7 months out from that election. So we've come a long way, and the polling's now putting us in the up at 60 seats in the last poll that I saw. So we've got a gap still to close, but that can be done, I believe. That is absolutely there to be done, and that's got to be our focus to encourage the people, persuade the people that see independence as the answer, that by voting for it next year, we'll put ourselves in a much stronger place for winning that referendum, which is the only route. It's the only internationally recognised route that's going to get us to where we need to get to. So I'll stop there. I know there'll be a lot of questions on a lot of that, and very happy to engage in that.
Okay, thanks very much.
Anything else you want to talk about as well?
Thank you. So,
I'll do my
yeah,
best.
okay, Andrea.
Right. I was sitting listening for the first 5 minutes of your talk. You enthused me.
Yeah.
You gave me all those lovely details,
Yeah.
lovely facts. Whose responsibility is it to get that information out in the general public? Because I don't hear it in the news, I don't hear it in the radio, I don't read it in the papers. How are we going to get the proper news about the proper situation of Scotland's finances and status in the world? It doesn't seem to get out.
Well, this is a perennial problem we've had forever, right? And we've succeeded despite that, right? We win elections despite that, and we came close in 2014 despite that. The news media, be it broadcast or print, is not, for the most part, one or two exceptions, our friends. And the only way that's happened is by us, all of us, persuading people that is what needs to happen. There's no other way to do that. I would love for us to have a whole range of media that was balanced and would let us put our case across. And I get on the media and I take the opportunities as they present themselves to make that case. Of course I do. But I'm no secret I've not got the BBC calling me up and asking me to come on and talk about how wonderful Scotland is and why we should be independent. Quite the opposite. So they want to get you on and try and trip you up on stuff. So that's not easy, right? But that's the only way forward. And it's an uphill struggle, but that's the only way we're going to make progress. But as I say, we've done it in the past, and we'll continue to focus on doing that. And as I say, it's everybody's responsibility to take that message forward.
Just a bit of a follow on from what Andrina kind of said, because there's a situation where all that, the strength of the economy, for example, doesn't get out. But it's not just that, it's also that the media in Scotland comes up with stuff that's taken out of context. I don't think BBC or anyone's lies, but they get someone on that tells a wee story, a wee anecdote. It's not put into context. So it's not just that the news doesn't get out in the news, it's actually misrepresented. So there was talk for ages about a rebuttals set up. Has it ever happened?
Well, the stuff happens. I get every day stuff through from the media within the party putting out news on positive news stories, criticising stuff the UK government's done and putting the right perspective on it and rebutting things that are out there that aren't accurate. So that is there now. Maybe we need to communicate that more widely. I think that's maybe part of the issue, but certainly I can show you on my emails every day getting 3 or 4 things coming through saying this and this. Here's the right story. But as I said, do we need to do more to communicate that more widely? Yeah, maybe we do.
Does the SNP have someone that they employ and that's their job?
Well, the media group within HQ and also within the MSP group, the central resource they've got there, that's what they do. And they've got several people that work on media on this. And not just on media, but also obviously on the digital media stuff, which I think we shouldn't forget. And I do. It's not my cup of tea, to be honest with you. And I need some help to navigate my way around it. But it's the power of that is increasingly, even compared to 5, never mind 10 years ago, it's exponentially more important than it was. You can reach a lot more people, and I suppose that's the counter to what we're talking about in terms of the print media and the broadcast media. Social media has got a much deeper reach. Young people, but frankly, right across all the age spectrums. And if you target that, you can focus your message, you can get out there more effectively. And I think it's a moving target. That technology is moving on all the time with different platforms. But the SNP's been had quite an effective team on that, and that's been upgraded now to deal with some of the new platforms.
Yeah, you do have a lot of good stuff coming out on Instagram. Actually, it's quite snappy.
There's a couple of problems with what you're saying.
Number one, you say next year vote SNP1, vote SNP2. That's just going to allow a lot of unionist parties in. If you vote SNP1 and you vote other pro-independence parties too, you maximise the pro-independence majority. And secondly, the last thing, the whole strategy for independence is always about asking for permission for a Section 30, asking permission of London to hold a referendum. Is it no more true that what King McCaskill's saying? We have to take it, and basically we get a pro-independence majority next year or any time after that, that we have to become basically taking independence instead of the current SNP administration acting like a colonial administration for Westminster.
Right. So a few things. First of all, if we'd done that in 2011 and not voted SNP on the list, we wouldn't have had the referendum in 2014 because we were doing 12 seats short of majority. That's the reality of it. So we need to remember that. You're talking about not voting SNP on the list.
So the reality of the situation is in 2011 you had 50 constituency seats.
That's right. That's right.
Now, when you were talking about replicating the 2011 result again, so we're probably going to win 60, which means I've got those figures there.
We might
shows that we're not going to get the majority because we're going to fall short yet again. And these figures we've got here show we've got 63 seats, this is the latest thing, and no regional seats. So we're still in a minority.
Yeah.
We still can't get a majority in Parliament.
So 2 seats short. Right.
It doesn't matter, 2 seats short.
3-4 months ago we were 10 seats short. This thing will change every week for the next 7 months. Our job is to maximise the vote to get those seats.
You will never get enough constituency seats to get a majority in Parliament.
Well, I think we've got a good chance of doing that given where we're at now, but that actually points to the fact that we need to win list seats, and unless people are voting SNP on the list, we're not going to get those list seats either.
You have to win the list seats. That's where the battleground is going to be fought.
I don't accept that, but we won 2 list seats on the last election as well.
2 list seats, and did you have a majority?
We were 1 short.
So the question is, how are you going to get more list seats, independent seats?
We're going to get more seats by winning 1 more seat than we won the last time, and I don't think that's a big ask.
It's a huge ask.
Right, so going from 64 to 65 is impossible, is it?
It's not impossible,
Exactly.
It's high, but you're prepared to gamble on this.
I'm not gambling on anything, I'm telling you that's the only way to do it. What's the alternative?
The alternative is to vote 1 for SNP and vote 2 for an independent supporting party.
And what chance have they got?
They have a very good chance, because if you tell the people to don't waste your second vote on SNP, put your vote in for the Independence Party, then this is the problem, because we've had 10 years of this stuff here, telling us to vote 1 and 2. The last time round in 21, we had 1.1 million votes for the list seats, and how many seats did we win?
But that's the whole point, right?
2.
And what did those other parties get in that?
You got 2 seats for 1.5 million.
People can't tell the voters how to vote. You can't go and say, make the case for SNP, but by the way, we want to do something else. It's fine having that conversation in this group of 30 people, but if you go out there and talk to the SNP voters, or any voters, and you try and tell them that you want them to do that, they're going to look at those other parties and they're going to say, you're having a laugh, I'm not voting for them. Alpha will get 1.5%, the rest of them are nowhere.
There's 2 issues which I find the independence movement in general are dodgy, and maybe to some extent my party as well, but certainly that the whole movement is this: turnout. I mean, let's assume by one means or another we, the independence movement, the SNP, either in the way Ivan suggests or in the way you suggest, or something in the middle, and we get a majority in the Scottish Parliament. 1, it could happen with a thumping big turnout. No one in here wants to talk about the turnout, is that convenient? Maybe Ivan does, but I don't think many other people want to talk about the turnout. If the turnout is less than before, the UK government will say no, and the next Reform government won't even say no, they'll just laugh. So the turnout is really important. We know from voting the SNP vote in terms of overall voters is down somewhat, but it's not going anywhere else. They are certainly not voting, they're not switching to Labour, they're not switching to Reform in Scotland in any way. they're not switching to anything the least, partly because the people in the list on economic issues are within parts of a degree in the same position as the SNP. But when it comes to the economic case, the basics as far as I'm concerned, they're not that far from the Scottish National Party, so there's not that much difference. So the idea that they're trying to Corbynise the left, I mean, the idea of Kenny coming up as a sort of doing a Corbyn thing or a Sultana thing is laughable. So the question is, we're going to have a lower turnout, then my party will probably form the government in coalition with other parties. But then it asks a question of ourselves. When they say no, what then? When was the last time you were in a room where you discussed civil disobedience? And I'm not putting that to Ivan, I'm putting it to all of us. Because when they say no, you either move to civil disobedience in a genteel way, pensioners sitting down in subways in SW1 only, or something like that, with folk with tabards on for their health and all the rest of it. You either move on to that case. The point is, I find it fascinating that no one really wants to talk about what happens when they say no.
That's not quite true.
I don't think that's quite
Some
true,
of us
Bill.
have been involved in various things discussing, challenging Westminster.
Okay, right, thank you.
Ivan, could you explain to us why the SNP have not put more energy behind the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights? There's a petition at the moment in Holyrood that has more than 7,000 names on it. The first thing is that people have the right to decide their own political setup.
Are you talking about the UN?
The UN Covenant, and the UK government has already signed this, but Scottish Holyrood has to separately back it.
No, it's not as simple as that, of course it's not. You know, we see to other countries and the trouble they've had getting recognised, we can talk about Palestine. Right, Palestinian recognition, if you want to talk about an example where somebody's trying to get, and has been for a very, very, very long time, UN recognition and the vast majority of the Palestinian population obviously support an independent Palestinian state, as do nearly 150 countries across the world. Talk about Catalonia, right, where did that get then? Okay. So it's not as easy as just saying we think that the UN should recognise us. That's not going to happen.
The petition committee have accepted that it's competent.
Right, but that's, I mean, the Constitution is reserved, right?
No, this is not reserved. This is completely not reserved. This is something that Holyrood has the power to back at the moment.
To ask the UN to make Scotland independent?
No. To bring this, the petition, to bring this covenant into force in Scotland.
What does this covenant do?
It gives you international civil and political rights.
As an independent country?
No, as you stand, as a people. People in the world, they have the right to have power of self-determination. That's the first political right.
So what does that mean then in reality?
It means the first thing is that our Parliament has the right to hold consultation with the people.
No, but the Supreme Court ruled on that.
That petition could go before Holyrood today if it got the backing. And there's 7,000 people have already signed that petition, and that would be a way forward. Political rights.
I don't think that's
self-determination.
Correct.
Bernie, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I kind of support what Ivan says regarding the second vote. I think we've got some good smaller parties and they do a lot of good groundwork, but I really think we should give the vote, our second vote, first and second, to the SNP. That's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. Now what I'd like to also ask is how secure is the Scottish National Health Service at the moment under the Scottish Government? Thank you.
How secure is it?
Yes.
Well,
For privatisation or?
Yes.
well, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're very, very clear on where we are with regards to the health service staying in public ownership as it is. Now, down south there's been some privatisation moves on some aspects, but that's absolutely not where we are.
But when
overruled by Westminster, as has happened in the past, there's a National Health Service then.
In what sense?
There will be none. If it's privatised in the south, it will stop funding the National Health Service. So, and if we try and do something about it, it will just overrule us. as they did over many other situations?
Well, I'll be honest with you, if we get to that situation, then I would expect that support for independence would skyrocket in the country and put in a much, much stronger place.
You said that our position on the National Health Service is secure.
Yeah.
And I said to you, funding for the National Health Service comes from England.
That's right, yeah.
And if England says it's privatised, what will happen?
Well, in terms of the funding for the health service, that continues to increase year on year. It's £22 billion this year. And what I'm saying is that if there was a move in Ireland to stop funding the health service in Scotland, which is devolved, and we run the health service in Scotland, and that's clear, I think you'd find yourself in a very, very different place if that was the situation. But to be honest, I don't see that's a real situation. I mean, the financial situation more generally is absolutely stretched, right? There's no doubt about that, and that's part of the austerity measures that even this UK Labour government's taking forward. But the health service is run in Scotland, and we make the decisions on how it operates.
But you don't have any control over the finances that comes from London.
Well, that's correct, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And can
Absolutely.
we just sell parts of our National Health Service off?
Can who do that?
And we can't stop them.
Well, the health service in Scotland is devolved. It's run by the Scottish Government. It's funded by the Scottish Government.
Sell bits.
Of the Scottish Health Service?
Yes.
No.
I'm envisaging potentially Labour versus Farage at the next UK general election. Farage could well get in. Trump could turn America into a really fascist state unless the left gets organised over there and then get some solid socialists amongst the Democrats to take on, to motivate the working class people. I personally feel that we've been funneled into fascism in this country, and I don't know how we get our act together to counter that, because there's a solid drip in all the media going in that direction, including the BBC. So all I'm saying, in that really hostile potential climate, are we gubbed when it comes to independence? If SNP can't pull it off, the majority this time round, I think this UK scenario is going to be dire. If Reform gets in, they're going to probably wind up or make the Scottish Parliament a real basket case.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that the situation, the political situation in the UK and internationally, as you point out, is it's difficult. There's forces there that are want to go in a direction that all of us would be very uncomfortable with, but you only defeat that by making the case and arguing for what we believe in terms of resisting against that, and that's part of what we need to do. Now, how does that play into the independent space? I think that it's really important that we're aware of that threat, but I think some of the conversations earlier on, comments that Bill made, people that are, starting from my experience on the doorsteps, there are some people there with some very unpalatable views, but a lot of the people that are in that space and are supporting reform or thinking about that is because they've got dissatisfaction with other areas and they see that as being an easy answer, right? And I think that's the vast majority of people that are indicating that they want to support reform, and I think the case is very much there to be made that that isn't the answer. But you can't not guard against that drift to that very difficult situation. You've seen it historically. If you look back at where this has happened in the past, it starts off from these kind of things and then it evolves into something much more sinister. We've absolutely got to guard against it.
Don Craig, does you have your hand up?
I'm wondering if Ivan could make a commitment to take a look into that ICCPR, not just the petition but the actual ICCPR document.
No, I'm very happy to look at it.
Please do have a read of it.
Okay. Very happy to look at it. Yeah.
I mean, look, I understand that if there's a majority of SNP MSPs, that's straightforward. It's also easier for you, as a party to kind of right. So I get that. But what I don't get is that you seem to be saying somehow if it wasn't that, but it was a majority between, it would be SNP and Greens, because they'll get less seats, as there is like just now and has been for a while. You're sort of saying somehow that won't count with Westminster. But how does that happen? They might try and use it as an excuse, but if you've got a majority, you've got a majority. So
That's what we've got just now.
It's how a government's work when you've got a proportional setup, don't you? So I don't see why you need to go with that quite so strongly, apart from the fact that I see it would be simpler.
That's what we've got just now.
So
well, your point is that we had a majority of pro-independence MSPs in the Parliament, we get a referendum. We've got a majority of pro-MSPs in the Parliament at the moment, and we don't get a referendum.
yeah, but not necessarily because of that. For that reason, I mean, you know, it goes way back. First of all, it was Mrs May. Now is not time. Then it was bloody Boris Johnson. Then it was what's her name, Truss, and then it was. So there's been this series of, you know, UK prime ministers. I mean, maybe it's nothing to do with the fact that it's you know, two parties together that have got the majority. Maybe it's because they know damn fine and are frightened that they'd lose the referendum, so they're going no. So I don't quite see why you've got to go with that.
Right. Look, we've had all these scenarios have happened. We don't need to guess or hypotheticals. We know what's happened, right? There's been one time when we had a majority of SNP MSPs, including, as I said, an awful lot of them on the list. That second vote was very, very important in 2011, and we got a referendum. We've had a scenario now twice where we've had a pro-independence majority in the Parliament of MSPs from two parties, and we didn't get a referendum. And we've had a scenario in 2021 where we got the majority of votes on the list. We didn't quite get a majority of seats, with 64, but we did get a majority. It was more than 50% voted for pro-independence parties in 2021, and we didn't get a referendum. So all three scenarios are there, and only one of them's delivered.
Yeah, but
the other two didn't deliver. That's historical.
But it's not quite. It's not quite the case though, because going back to 2011, yes, there was a majority, but there was also 20% support for independence. I mean, that must have been a factor in how Cameron went ahead and said, "Yeah, go on, you go."
But the point I'm making is that if you're looking at what situation needs to prevail after the election next year, the only situation where we've got a referendum in the past has been when there's been an SNP majority in the Parliament. Every other scenario that people are talking about, if only this happened, if only that happened, if only the majority of MSPs, pro-independence MSPs, have only got a majority of votes on the list, etc., etc. All of those things have happened, and they haven't resulted in a referendum, right? And if we've got the same result next year as we had this year, which is we fall short of MSPs, SNP MSPs, short of a majority, but we get a majority of pro-independence parties on the list, which we did get in 2021. Why would it be any different to what it was in 2021?
So what would you do then? Did you just sit back and say, "Oh well, it's just the same thing again"?
We continue to argue for independence. Of course, we don't stop doing that. But I'm saying the only thing that unlocks this, is demonstrated to unlock it, has been an SNP majority. That's the only time we've had it.
Well, I think the only thing that unlocks it is being demonstrated, poll after poll, that we're up at 55% in support of yes, or 60%, and like Bill mentioned earlier, some of us start going in for civil disobedience.
No government presents a referendum it knows it's going to lose. So the higher the pro-independence thing goes, the less. You forget that David Cameron was really poor judgment and not very bright, and he made the mistake time and again, even allowing our independence referendum. That was a mistake for him.
Going into the elections, all the political parties must put on that every vote for an independent candidate counts towards the overall result, i.e. if we get enough of the vote, if we get enough of the seats as well, like the MSPs, then they should all count as towards the overall majority. So that if we get a majority of like we've got just now, then that counts, and we go to Westminster and say that is the majority. And it's been everybody's manifesto, and they've all got to come out, including the SNP, they've got to come out and say this is what's going to happen. But the other thing is, John Sweeney has said, if we get a majority, they will give us a referendum. They won't.
I'm saying that's the only way it's happened.
They will not. The only reason why we got one was the fact that the independence was done with 20-odd%, and he knew he wasn't going to get beat. They know now they are going to get beat if there's a referendum takes place, and they're never going to agree to a referendum, no matter how, even if the SNP took all the constituency seats, we're still going to say no.
So have we got any leverage with the Westminster government?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What happens when they say, we get all this, and they say no? What does John do?
Yeah, what do you do then?
Ivan, what's legal?
The point is, unless you've got that SNP majority, you're not going to get anything.
Yeah, but see,
Let's say you get it, and they say no. What do you do then?
what's next?
Yeah, well, that is the only route forward, right?
How do you think the situation in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland and their, what do you call it, they've got an agreed time
Yeah,
scale
the border
for,
polls at 7 years.
yeah, if that went ahead, do you think that would have any bearing on Scotland having a referendum?
If there was a border poll in Ireland?
Yes.
I think, well, first of all, there's a 7-year time, but there's also
right.
some other conditions
Yeah,
as
It's
well.
the Secretary of
It's
State
not
has to
just-
decide, not
Yeah.
the
Yeah, Secretary of State, yeah. The government needs to decide, so there's a number of conditions
Yeah, I understand that.
so the question is, politically, if that happened in Ireland, would that make a difference in Scotland? I don't know, to be honest. I think I can see a case where it might, and a case where it could actually make it more difficult, right? And I think comparing those two situations is probably not helpful because they're very, very different situations for lots of reasons.
I just wondered if it was a bit like Jenga when plugs pulled out.
Still have another go. So next year, right? Popular election, SNP end up with a majority of the SNP, of the MSP. So exactly what you want. What would happen then? Would you go to London? I know people say, "Oh, you shouldn't ask, just take it." But just practical politics. You go, they say yes on the same basis. Fine, that will mean that your theory about why we got one in the first place was right. But if you've got a majority of MSPs, you go to London and they go no. So what would an SNP government do at that point?
Well, the point is that is the only route through. There isn't any other route that gets you.
Fine, I'm happy to accept that.
Absolutely
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
And you've got it.
True.
Come on, let's just go with a simple scenario.
Ivan,
So this is about building political pressure, right?
Yeah.
And you put in your manifesto
Leverage
and
and
you
so
get the majority for it, then you've got a very, very strong case that says, look, we're very clear about this. The majority of people voted for us. We got the majority in the Parliament of SNP MSP, stood on that platform. There's been a period of time has elapsed since the last one, and that political case is there. So now, this is all about political leverage. It's all about
leverage, what have we got?
putting the case forward, persuading people to vote for that, getting that majority in the Parliament, which is what they understand. And that was demonstrated the last time. And then you're making the case that says the last time this happened, we got the majority. What's the argument that we can't get it this time? We got the referendum because we had the majority. What's the
So
argument
again,
we can't get it this
please,
time? It's as simple as that, right? There is no magic bullet. As I said at the start, there's no easy way through it. It's about building that political pressure. It's about demonstrating that's what people want. It's about putting it in your manifesto and doing what we did the last time, which is winning the majority of SNP MSPs. There is no other route through, right? Because everything else has happened,
what's the plan
it
B,
hasn't
though?
resulted in there being a referendum.
Yeah, so is there a plan B?
If they
If
say
they say no,
Say no.
then you've got all
That's the only way through.
But if they say
you go
no,
home again.
Which they're going to do.
Well, you're in a position then where you've done what we did the last time. We've put the case clear to the electorate. We've won the majority of SNP MSPs in the Parliament. And the argument is that why would it be any different this time?
Then they say no.
That's why it's
Well, what
different.
then? Do you then go, oh, okay, then
No, that's a political campaign then that says that Scotland's right to choose. We've won that majority. It's not credible for them to deny democracy on that basis.
Not within their democratic credentials, which is...
Because the argument up to now has been you're not getting another referendum because you haven't won a majority. The people don't want it. You haven't won the majority in the Parliament of SNP MSPs.
is that not letting them cherry pick what the terms are? Whereas if
What's the
we're-
alternative?
Well, what people are suggesting here is that why should it only be the SNP vote that counts when there's other
Yeah, but
independent sporting parties that would be part of
sure,
that?
but that's where we are today, and that's obviously not working. The point is, there's only been one scenario that has worked, and the two other scenarios haven't worked.
in different circumstances.
Okay.
Ivan's going to have to go now, so thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ivan, for...
There you go. That was quite an interesting discussion in lots of ways, and probably good just to note it took place before the SNP conference. So a lot of the discussion was about the proposed SNP conference motions and what Ivan's view was. So we now know that SNP conference did go with Ivan's preferred both votes SNP, which may not go down too well with the people who were in that room who were the majority were against that idea. What are you thinking about that?
You would have heard me at the end there. I mean, I had a good go at trying to get him to explain a bit more about the, I don't know, the rationale behind that. Because he basically said, well, there was an SNP majority government in 2011. We got the referendum. Therefore, that shows you that we need a majority SNP government in order to get a referendum. Well, it doesn't.
Correlation is not causation. He might also have been wearing his lucky blue socks that day. It doesn't mean that if he wears them again, the same thing's going to happen.
Exactly, and it's a really good example of an invalid argument that's called after, therefore, because of. So it's basically when someone says, okay, that thing happened after that thing, therefore that thing caused the thing that came after. So it's not necessarily true. Now, it is true that having a majority government was a pressure. It was a pressure on Westminster and David Cameron, and you had to have enough MSPs in Holyrood to put through the vote that we wanted the referendum. So obviously it is a big factor in it, but it's not necessarily like the cause. There's always several kind of causes, and the other one, which I kept trying to tell him, but he wasn't having it, was that Cameron knew we were at about 24% in favour of referendum, and it was going to be a good way just to kind of get the thing off, done and dusted. And you can see that Fiona and I are not we're still not convinced, but there you go.
I was so not convinced, I went and dug out a little clip from The Guardian back in 2014 with Cameron explaining why he made that decision. So he's asked, why is he taking the risk? And he said it was the right thing to do because the Scottish people in 2011 elected a Scottish National Party government. One of their policies was to have a referendum on the future of Scotland. And he felt as Prime Minister of the UK, he had a choice. He could either say, well, you can't have a referendum, we'll decide, which is what everyone since then has decided. And he said he thought that would have led to an almighty and disastrous battle between the Westminster Parliament and the UK government and the Scottish government and the Scottish First Minister. He said, you voted for a party that wants independence. You should have a referendum that is legal, that is decisive, and that is fair. Now, back in 2011, the SNP was the party of independence. But now the Greens have come out much more clearly than they did. I can't remember what they said in 2014, to be honest. But now they're very clearly an independence party. And Greens plus SNP has a majority and has had a majority for years. So it's not the same situation. But that thing at the end, you voted for a party that wants independence, that currently could apply whether you vote for SNP, Greens, ALBA, ISP, or any other party yet to come out of the woodwork who supports independence.
Indeed. The thing that isn't on that particular quote is Cameron. I knew he was only at 25%, so I thought, oh God, let's go for it and get this off the table. You kind of look back to David Cameron, and I kind of look and I think, well, that was quite honourable. I mean, it wasn't the whole story, but I think that of David Cameron when he actually was Prime Minister. But it's because we're comparing it, or I'm comparing him with all the Tory Prime Ministers that came back, that, since that just said, now is not the time.
But he seemed quite worried about a stushy between the two governments. They don't give a toss now, do they? I mean, Starmer's more or less said never mind if this and if that. So to get back to the podcast episode that we've just watched, I mean, the SNP have decided that's the way they're going. And I'm sure a lot of their members will consider that is now the direction that's been set and they should follow it. Personally, I don't think I'm going to be giving both my votes to the SNP.
So listen, folks. Never just tell Fiona what to do, right? It's not the way to get her to do anything. Just don't ever just tell her what to do.
Yeah, it's not. Well, it is that. It totally is that. But also, it feels a little bit like a tactic, which they're absolutely, as a party, entitled to do, try and maximise their own vote. But I don't think that's necessarily going to get us the best result as a movement. It's true, actually. I mean, to me, having a majority of independent supporting MSPs in Holyrood that are cross-party to some extent. I mean, it's only going to be Greens and SNP. I mean, ALBA and the others are, I mean,
good on them for keeping going, but actually they're not going to get any seats, I predict. So to me, that's a stronger mandate than if it's just one party. I mean, going back to what the SNP have said, I just is beyond me, because of course they're not going to say, hey guys, vote us in the constituency and then maybe vote someone else in the list. No political party is going to say that. And actually, I think they can't actually say that. They should just say, okay, yes, SNP 1 and 2, and leave it at like that, but not add in the other thing, because that's what we need in order to get a referendum, because that's just shooting yourself in the foot, because if they get the overall number for MSP from the SNP party, great, fine, done it. But if they don't, that's where they've shot themselves in the foot, because we know what will happen. The unionists will come back and say, oh, well, you haven't got it. You said that was what you needed to have a mandate. You haven't got the mandate.
Yeah, exactly. But then us as the wider movement, we can say, well, okay, SNP, that was your tactic. This is ours. We think there's a majority across more than one party. That's good enough for us. And I don't see why we should allow Westminster to set the rules on this one. Let them argue that an SNP majority is different from an SNP+Greens majority.
Yes,
and let them do it in court.
Exactly. That I think that's a really good point. Let them put them in the position where they've got to argue it. But that's gone now, because the SNP have said that's what we need. As
you can see, even a few weeks after that meeting with Ivan, we're still quite het up about the issues that were discussed. And even after the SNP's made their choice, let's see where we go from here.
Yeah.
This one's going to run and run.
It is going to run and run, and we'll be running alongside it. Once again, thanks for watching.
Thanks. Bye now. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to make sure you're following us and subscribe to us, then you get notified every time we put something new out, so you don't miss anything. That would be great. Also, you can click the little bell if you're watching on YouTube.
And sign up for our mailing list. You can do that from the website, and we always send one out at the beginning of each month to tell you what's happening. Last but not least, you can buy us a coffee on coffee.com.